And we're live again. Everyone well?
Good, Leon, thank you.
Very well, thanks.
It's actually so weird for me to ask whether you're well, because I mean, I'm sure everyone knows that we're having discussions throughout the day. It's not the first time we actually read each other, but I'll keep it that way and just be polite. Okay, so an idea we had was to look through I guess a bit of a diagram or infographic that we have internally, and it's around the role of QA within I'm going to say a typical Scrum team, because we know that Scrum teams are also sometimes very different depending on which organization you're in. Certain organizations do Agile a lot more or better compared to others. I don't want to say better, differently. They do Agile differently. And the role within an Agile team, and specifically Scrum, which we'll look at today, it also very much differs depending on which organization you're in. So Stephan will actually go ahead and share something, which we'll talk through, and we'll debate it a little bit. I think this is not cast in stone. It's not something that needs to be followed to the T, but it's kind of our stab at something that should work for most organizations, maybe something which is fairly generic and fairly easy to apply in terms of the QA role within an organization, how that plugs into Scrum. So I think, Stephan, if you can go ahead and start sharing, then we can take a look.
Thanks, Leon.
Do you just want to start by maybe just walking us through it, and then as you go through, we can maybe just, if anyone wants to mention anything, give their opinions, challenge anything on you, etc., then we'll just do that.
For sure. So I think just from a bird's eye view, if we just look at the top layers, we try to visualize it as saying, for any Agile project, there's usually a start of a project phase, and then obviously when the project starts, we go sprint by sprint, each sprint having pre-sprint activities, in-sprint activities, and then post-sprint activities. And once the actual project has been delivered, well, that's all. It could be end of sprint or end of project. If it's only end of sprint, we just run back to pre-sprint activities. So just to give that sort of bird's eye view. So what this diagram tries to show is, as part of each of these steps or phases in a Agile, or in a project that uses the Agile methodology, just to sort of give an idea or guidance as to what the QA team's responsibility should be. So I guess let's jump into it. So right at the start of a project, one of the first steps should be to, well, as a team, define the initial product backlog. And that typically is based on something like a documentation like a BRS and a FRS, those kind of documentations. But from a testing point of view, that's typically the stage where a test plan is created. So I know there's a lot of the time there's debate, like, is a test plan really still needed? I would definitely say yes. Maybe to some degree, some companies like a more detailed test plan than others, but nevertheless, definitely a test plan. I mean, I was just busy with talking to a client this morning, and I think sometimes people don't realize, if you properly write the test plan, you are actually busy doing static testing of the documentation. Because of you writing a proper test plan, and you need that clarity in terms of what the scope of the system is, how that integrates with other pieces of or other systems within the organization. Because if you don't have that view, and if that diagrams and architecture isn't available, then your test plan is going to be very vague. So you are actually really deep diving into a lot of documentation, trying to understand the different non-functional requirements and functional requirements, and because that needs to be stipulated in your test plan. So I think this is a very important step, and people overlook the static testing aspect to it. I think that's very important.
Do
you want to talk to that?
You go.
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry.
Well, I just want to talk about this a little bit, Stephan, because it's a concept I struggle with and get a lot of questions about, is this test plan. Now, there are two test plans. You're talking about a start of project test plan, and maybe the word test plan I struggle with a little bit. So maybe how do we want to test the project from a strategy perspective or from an approach perspective. And then a lot of clients ask for, before we start the sprint, what is your test plan as well? So if you're talking about great test plan here, which specific one are you referring to?
That's a good question. I made an assumption then that's dangerous. I know some companies talk about a test plan, and they actually refer to the test cases. In this case, definitely it's the strategic plan. It's the overall approach to how you're going to handle testing. It talks about what's in scope, what will you be focusing on, what is out of scope, what are those test items. Like I mentioned, if I don't have an architectural diagram of where this piece of new system or functionality fits into the bigger picture, I don't know what to test. I don't know what integration to test. I don't know the scope of my integration to test. There's a lot of components. You need to understand what are the functional requirements, what are the non-functional. Do we care about performance? Do we care about security? Who's responsible for what? Timelines. Sometimes, my personal opinion is not to include timelines specifically in a test plan. I would rather have a link to the overall project plan, and then those testing activities should slot into the central test project plan, or in terms of milestones and deliverable timelines. But that, to answer your question in short, it's definitely the strategic document, not the test plans in terms of test cases.
Yeah, and then I like it because I think that word test plan sometimes confuses us. And as soon as we start talking about test plans, we want resources and timelines and things. I think what you're positioning here is the right one to say, if you're looking at this piece of work, looking at the integrations, inter-system and external system integrations, what is your approach and what kind of testing would you recommend we do just to start planning? And I agree, the architectural diagrams play a big role, but it's not we're going to test this feature here. Stephan's going to test it's going to be tested in sprint 3. It's not that kind of thing. It's more high level. Thanks. I agree with that. Stephan?
And yeah, I think a lot of the time people make the mistake of a test plan being a burden. It's just a document or artifact that you write once off just to get it out of the way as part of your quality gate, and then they forget about it, and then maybe pick it up again when you submit it at the end of your project. Or to me, when I talk to test analysts and say write a test plan, they should see it as a practical document. I'd rather have a test plan that are 10 lines long, and you keep it in your back pocket and you refer to it every day, rather than a 50-pager and you never look at it again. So it always needs to be practical. It's not about the length. It's about, can you practically apply that strategy in a project? If it's just a fluffy theoretical thing, nobody's going to bother about it or look at it again. So I think that, to me, is the important bit about this step.
I was just going to add, is the pushback from the client, because I've had it with clients where the pushback on something like that would be, Agile doesn't advocate lots of process and lots of documentation. So like I like to refer to them as purists. Like they refer to the Scrum Guide as like gospel, and you shouldn't deviate from it. And I would always challenge them with, it's not what it says. It just says no pointless or frivolous, unnecessary documentation for the sake of it. Like a one-page approach or a couple of page approaches of how you plan to tackle testing for the team for every sprint they run is a really valid artifact to have, and is really valuable. It's not going to slow the sprint down. If anything, it should speed it up, because you're not going to get questions from, for example, people new to the team. Well, what do we do around performance? Well, our approach to performance testing is in the test plan or approach document, or Confluence page, or wherever it is you store that.
Yeah, and that makes sense, because I think, again, to belabor the point, the test plan thing, when we grew up, a test plan was a 20, 30-page document, as Stephan has said. And an artifact saying, what do we want to test? Kind of which testing types? How do we want to tackle it? If we do performance, do you do it in sprint? Are we going to leave that? So those kind of things are extremely valuable. And this artifact, Stephan, you said it should be a short thing that really just guides us, rather than this historic test plan that feeds into approach, that goes into a strategy sitting with 90-page documents. So then I absolutely agree. Sorry, Leon.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think you can very easily replace the word test plan, not replace. Alternative words could be test strategy, test approach, test plan. Companies will refer to it as different things. But what's important is that activity drives conversation. And that, for me, is the massive benefit of having that. It's going to force people to think about a project and what's required for a project. What are all the considerations? Have we thought about this? Have we thought about that? So I completely agree. It should not be a tick box activity, and it should be something which is a living document. So let's argue that this is an approach for how we're going to test this project. I don't think that's something that you do and you complete. It's something that you're going to continuously work on. It needs to be an organically growing document. As you're going through the project, you're making changes and maybe you're adapting it, etc. But again, it's good because it drives conversation. And as you're having more conversations, your test plan, test approach, test strategy, whatever you want to refer to it as, it actually adapts with you.
Yeah, and it should, because if you look at that start of the project, it's initial product backlog. We're only getting to the nitty-gritty detail in grooming, but mostly sprint planning, where you really understand integrations, for example. You really understand, is there accessibility here, is there performance here, is there functionality here? And then when you get there, you can refer back and update that according to the new decisions. And I like that.
Yeah.
But I just want to reiterate what, I can't remember whether it was Jéhan or Stephan that said it, but I'm not a subscriber of this being a 20, 30, 40, 50 page document anymore.
Totally, yeah.
It's a couple of pages maximum, because we know in the past how difficult it is to firstly get people to read a document of that length. Let's be honest. Everyone outside of testing doesn't really care about testing that much, or they don't have a massive interest. They do not want to go and read a 50-page document about testing and how we're going to approach it. So you need to keep it light for your audience, but it needs to have the pertinent information in there where you're getting your point across. Everyone knows what you're planning. Everyone's on the same page. And like I said, it's driving the conversation. So I definitely think there's still value in doing it, but be pragmatic in terms of the length and what actually goes into it.
Kind of bring me to my second question. Sorry, Stephan. I'll ask after you finished your thought.
Yeah, thanks, Jéhan. I'll be quick. Now, just sometimes the devil is in the detail. Sometimes the test plan shouldn't be too light. Like I always talk about reporting. What will be in those reports when stakeholders ask us 2-3 months down the line for a report? If we agree, for example, sometimes we need to go into a little bit of detail depending on the section of a test plan or test strategy, because if you know, let's say for example 3 months down the line, somebody asks you, tell me, I want to see for each user story what's your test coverage and clearance on that. If you didn't know that was a requirement, you probably wouldn't have necessarily made the point of linking each test case to a specific user story and then link it also to the requirement which is for that user story. If you don't do that metadata linking up front, you're going to be scrambling around 3 months trying to backdate your test cases. So certain things you have to be very pedantic about, agreeing with your stakeholders, say these are the things you said you wanted to see. I've prepped for this. I've got the metadata. But for these new reports, yes, I can do it, but it's probably going to take me some time, and just to cover yourself. So some sections high, but sometimes you need to think a little bit into the future and cover yourself. So anyway, that was just a side note. That's more from, it may be different per client, but it's just sort of a beware of going too light, too far to the other side as well.
Yep.
Yeah. And
I think it's very much, it's horses for courses. It's being pragmatic. So if you're in an organization where there's a lot of rigor, there's a lot of compliance, there's a lot of, you will know there's a lot of red tape typically in your day-to-day. You're probably going to angle more towards having a much longer, more detailed one. But if it's a much more agile environment, maybe small organizations or not necessarily small organizations, but just organizations which embrace agile more, then maybe it's slightly shorter and there's not as much detail in there. So again, I think it's just about being pragmatic and agreeing what the plan is in terms of that pragmatism. So this is what we're going to produce. Does that work for everyone? Yes. Okay, let's go for it.
I quite like a wiki format for that, or like a sub-page format, so you could, like you said, Stephan, maybe say defect management, we need to be really clear and concise on that. So you could just have a breakout page or a sub-page or a sub-thread that would go into that more detail, because not everyone cares about that, but let's say your cab approval process, they need to see what your defect management is. So that needs to be in a bit more detail. And doing it like a wiki page or subthreads is another way of just making it easy to navigate, and so people can just skim read or read the bits that are pertinent to them.
Good point.
Okay, I'm going to have to get us to move on. Otherwise, we're going to be here for 4 hours, and I'm sure no one's going to watch that long.
I do want to ask the second question. I know you'll move on, so we'll move on from that one. Should we then have a plan per sprint? Because that's the contentious part. If I speak to clients, they say, okay, I get that. I get the first one, and I think most people. But should you also then have a test plan per sprint?
I would say if you're part of like a release train and the purpose of the team changes, so let's say you're an API team, right, and then you are then moved to backend after like a year, like you should change it. Or if there's like a really narrow or specific scope for like the next 4 sprints, we're going to be doing this block of work, and then the next 4 months of the year we're doing a different block that's unrelated. That's when I would look at updating it, but I wouldn't do it sprint to sprint. I've rarely seen that in reality.
Agreed. I think it's very much project based. So as long as you as long as your sprints are still working towards delivering that project, there's no need for a test plan. But as soon as you're tackling a new project, or maybe like Steve mentioned, you're moving away into a different area, then I think there's a need for that again.
Cool, Leon. Should we move on to the next one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so talking about product backlog grooming, and that's an ongoing thing, right? But whenever we do product backlog grooming, we should always think about the 3 amigos exercise, where BAs, devs, and testers are all put together in these meetings to break down these user stories. And the QA team should always be involved when the acceptance criteria is defined. And I think mostly, yes, to ask, like, have you thought about this or that? But I think to me, it's always important, is that acceptance criteria testable? We need to make sure it's practical, that we can actually tell you, yes, this is actually meeting the criteria or not. That's super important. And I think often teams make the mistake of, when they're sizing stories, they only size the development component of that story and not always the testing component. And it's sometimes difficult to combine everything together. I've worked in teams where they would have a parent story, but then they would size the subtasks. They would size the dev subtask and the test subtask together, and then almost get a feel for it, and to just understand the differences in complexity. Because sometimes you can make a small dev change, but it has a massive testing impact, right? So we need to consider that. And then also, I think in terms of the product backlog grooming, always ensure that the definition of ready and the definition of done has the necessary QA elements. These are typically things that are generic across all user stories, other than when we talk about acceptance criteria, that's specific per user story. But when I say ensure definition of ready and definition of done has the necessary QA elements, when we talk about these things, that some examples of definition of ready is the user story well written and easy to understand, so that you have context? Does it, like I mentioned, does it have clear and testable acceptance criteria? Does, all the external and internal dependencies identified and noted? These kind of things are important. Is the testing, is the testing effort clearly estimated as part of your definition of ready? And also, is the story prioritized? So that's also part of your definition of ready. So that if you have 20 user stories to test in a sprint, which ones do you pick up first? So these definition of ready and definition of done elements might be different per team, but I think it's important to define this so that there's clarity. In terms of definition of done, it could be things like, has a unit test been written and passed? Has functional and non-functional testing passed? And are there any critical bugs, or there are no critical bugs before you can actually pass a user story at the end of the sprint? So I'm not sure what your experiences are in terms of these definition of ready and definition of done, or some of the other elements. Your thoughts?
That's an interesting one, Stephan. The way you explain it now is the, I suppose, the theoretical version. But I've seen increasingly so a lot of clients saying that testing is not part of the definition of done. So they have a definition of development done, And then those things move to a tasting backlog, which will then have our own definition of tasting done. Because for various reasons, and I've tried to debate it, but for various reasons, we're developing now, we don't want to deploy now, we don't want to test now. Tasting will have their own priorities and things like that. But what is, just for the room, what is your view on that? So they have a development done, which they say is the definition of done, and then testing will have their own definition of done somewhere else.
I personally don't like that, because that's us and them. And it breaks the team coherency. It's one team with one combined goal, as opposed to we're waiting on QA, or we're throwing it over the fence and it's in their backlog now. It creates a nice clean waterfall cycle within the sprint, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of it being a collaborative participation of all members, is what I would say.
They kind of take it one step further. So the testing sprint for the work that was developed in sprint 1 may only be in sprint 7. So they don't even make the definition of done for that sprint, testing and development. So they do test plan analysis and design in the sprint that the dev happens, but the test execution will happen 4, 6, 7, how many sprints later, which is quite an interesting one. It makes it a nightmare when you find defects, of course. But
should that story have been pulled into the sprint in the first place, then?
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
The thing for me is, one of the principles of Agile is to be able to release something after every sprint.
Yeah.
So in theory, you should have been able to deploy something. Now, for me, that's just creating technical debt. Yeah. And it's adding so many issues in terms of really being able to measure your sprint velocity. It's definitely going to, it's moving away from Agile, right? So the whole idea of Agile, being able to deploy after every sprint, in theory, I know a lot of companies don't do that, a lot of teams don't do that, but it's the whole collaboration thing, and it's getting everyone to collectively accept responsibility for quality as well. Now it's again driving a wedge between the development function and the testing function. And it was actually one of the things that I wanted to mention when Stephan went through this on the second in the second swim lane, in that, yes, we're referring to a QA team, but actually it's a quality function. It could be developers or testers doing those activities. It doesn't have to be someone that's designated a tester. But Jéhan, in that example where you're having development done now, and in 7 sprints time you're doing the testing, it feels more like waterfall than it does Agile. But it's almost even a prolonged version of waterfall. And I would then say, get the testers to work in a completely different team on their own, and move back to what worked in the old days, because now you're sort of stuck in between two worlds. And I can probably debate this for the next 2 hours. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the point of the sprint, isn't it? The point of Agile, it's just a Deming cycle, right? So the point is you release fast and often to get feedback fast and often, so you can course correct on that feedback. The testing is part of that feedback cycle. So the longer you wait for the feedback to come, the worse it is. So like this, I'm just thinking, like, practically, the testers find something, they find a defect, and the devs are like, yeah, we wrote that code 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you talking about? So like, surely that's going to slow the mechanism down, right?
Yeah. Plus, they've got now new sprint deliverables to focus on. Under pressure for that, now they're going to try and just give you a quick fix, not really think it through, because the pressure's on.
Yeah, I was just going to say that exact thing. This doesn't work for QA, but it doesn't work for the development function either, because for that exact reason, we've done it, we've completed it. Now, 2 months down the line or 5 weeks down the line, you're saying, oh, I now need to go back to it. I need to go and refresh myself around what I did, why I did it in a particular way, fix it. And then potentially in another week or 2, you're going to let me know whether it works or not. And I'm going to have to go away from what I'm currently doing. It's just, I would like to understand what the benefits are of that, as opposed to maybe all the cons we're seeing at the moment. But it just, I struggle to see the pros.
I've seen it, and I agree with everyone here, but I've seen it in, I want to say 50 to 60% of the clients in the last month that I've spoken to are doing this, right? So why are they doing this? And I didn't give you that context. So we had a webinar about testing and who testing should report to and the autonomy thereof. But they are saying that in a sprint, testing is in the way. So the developers are saying, I can't develop at the pace or cadence that I want to because testing is in the way. So they move testing out of the sprint. So now developers saying, "Well, great! Look at all the work I'm pushing through," and they're happy with the comebacks a couple of sprints down the line, because from a development perspective, and because development people are looking at the sprint, and they're heading up the sprint more often than not. They are saying, "Look at our development effort, and it's going well." Testers are on the way, so let's remove them. And let's give them a bone when they need one later down the line. And that's really where this is. And I agree with you. It's not the right way, but that's where this is coming from.
But it's like I can drive my car 100 miles, but the tires are going to fall off at 60. So I'm more bothered about like seeing the pseudonym of progress, the fakeness of progress, when in reality, I've got all this stuff behind me that needs to be sorted out. And eventually it's just going to crash into the back of there, right? That's just a strange way to think about it. And it does make it an us and them thing. It definitely makes it as QA are the problem, QA the thing that slows it down. Instead of thinking, how can we help the testers test faster? How can we speed it up? Us as developers, what can we do? Can we automate more of our code? Can we do more unit testing? Can we pair test with them so we can create a more depth in that automation pack? What can we do to speed them up, as opposed to let's pull them out of the team and put them in a different cadence? That's just a strange way of going about it.
And that was my approach, Stephen. I think you hit the nail on the head. And that's my response to that is absolutely. I get that testing seems to be in the way at the moment, but that is because you're testing at the wrong level. If you move testing to where it should be done, i.e. left or whichever down the pyramid, but we move testing to the responsibility of everyone. We see what developers can do in the testing. Well, then your testing load for a traditional tester is a lot less, and then we can get through the sprint. So if you move the testing or quality task, as Leon said, quality tasks to where they should be, then there shouldn't be an issue. But just because testing are still doing everything quality-wise, that they are becoming the bottleneck. So I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a bit controversial, but sometimes I think people write user stories incorrectly. They would maybe write an end-to-end user story that says, as person A, I want to do this, but it's sort of this end-to-end kind of user story, and they pull it in the beginning, and it's all the pieces on there, so you have to park it. People need to write small components in the user stories as small components that can be tested in isolation at that point in time in the project. And sometimes people really misuse the word, that the way that the user story is written, and that's why I say it needs to be testable, but testable at that point in time, not testable in 10 sprints time. So, and I think that's also where we as QA need to almost guide the people in the way that they write user stories and prioritize them. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I would really like to debate that for in another session, because I think it's very interesting. And someone said it's wrong. It's not necessarily wrong. It's just different. And maybe it's not wrong. Maybe there are merits to it. So maybe something we should discuss in future. Yeah, I mean, at the moment, we are also being a bit theoretical here, in that this is the right blueprint, this is the right thing to do. But maybe there are merits to doing it, and I think that's how testing evolves, right? To actually look at how those companies are doing it, and taking the good parts out of it, and keeping the good parts, and maybe improving the parts that could work better. So, no, it's a very interesting concept.
There is, of course, pure Agile says it needs to be done, like testing, everything done before. But in theory, you could potentially say only dev is done in the first sprint and testing is done the next sprint. But then they have to sort of say, if I can work at 100 points cadence, I only need to pick up 75 and allocate those other 25 for bug fixes and things. And maybe it's not wrong. At the end of your release, maybe allow another sprint just to realign and catch up everything. And I think teams are doing things like that. I've seen many flavors of what works for the teams. I don't think we need to be hard and fast about it. Like you say, Leon, it needs to be practical. We're not talking about perfect world, purist kind of almost theory, but people are creative in what I've seen in projects, and it is like that. So we do the same with automation, right? Typically, when it's UI automation, we always say N-1. We don't finish UI automation typically in the same sprint. We do it the next sprint, and that's also testing everything in a way. So why is that okay? I'm being sort of devil's advocate here, but
I think you're right.
Well, I think there's always going to be stuff that you're going to carry over to the next sprint. But I'm just, when I say no, I'm kind of coming with the perspective of you don't want to carry much. That technical debt, that baggage will quickly accumulate. And you'll have to have more and more of those like rebalancing sprints or reset sprints to clear that debt down and keep going. It's not just about releasing fast, it's about reducing waste. And technical debt is waste material, waste activity that you've not been able to complete. So it's just it's something that will accumulate, that's all. Yeah.
But it's only waste if you see it as waste.
Yeah.
And I think in that scenario, they don't actually see it as waste. They see it as a way of working. But it's interesting. I was just thinking most companies we speak to, they either want to reduce the cost of testing or they want to release more frequently and faster. That example goes completely against that because you're not releasing faster, you're releasing less frequently. And I'm just thinking from the business perspective, the business will want their changes on the site as soon as possible. So you're delaying that as well. So I wonder how much internal pressure there is on sort of that way of working in terms of actually getting into production more often.
So these clients that I'm talking about don't have the luxury, if that is a luxury, to release often. So there are big organizations working with financial institutions, for example, and they say, well, we release once every 3 months. We don't really care about it, right? And again, we said it's dependent on your organization, your operating model, where this is. And the argument should be then, should you do sprint, I suppose? Should you do agile? That's a different conversation. But they don't have to deploy that often, and therefore they just want to get as much out from a dev perspective, and they'll catch up.
I'm gonna have to force us to move on. We're gonna have to move on. Stephan,
yes.
I don't think there's much pushback from that third one, other than which one? Second one, other than the fact that I think it's a QA capability as opposed to necessarily the QA team doing that or a tester with a designated hat on. But I think we can definitely go to the sprint planning phase.
Sure. Let me see what we said here. Ensure that there is sufficient capacity in the team for QA tasks related to the upcoming sprints user stories. So once again, it's just how much effort is the story really going to take? It might be one day of dev, but it might require a lot more time to actually test the code. So make sure that you understand the cadence of your team, especially in your testing side, and make sure that you're not over allocated in terms of the testing effort.
I think that's actually important because often we get stuck in our ways, right? And as an agile team or as a Scrum team, we've become used to delivering X story points every sprint, and maybe your velocity is 20 or 30 or however you measure that is kind of irrelevant. But now you have someone who's going to be on holiday for 2 weeks, specifically within the testing capability, or maybe just in the team if everyone's doing testing collectively. But actually go and adjust your velocity for that following sprint when you're having holiday, as opposed to just relying on what we deliver every sprint, because then often you see failure and you've not actually considered the fact that, well, actually we were a person down in the sprint or 2 people down. And in smaller Scrum teams, that has a massive impact. If you have a team of 3 or 4, then a person not being there, I mean, you're losing potentially 25% capacity. So I think that first point is very important, in that you need to ensure that there's sufficient capacity, and it comes back to the planning.
For sure.
I think the only thing I would add to that is there's other QA tasks other than those associated with the user story. So prepping data, making sure environment's stable, like general housekeeping around other bits and bobs, is all activities that need to happen in that sprint, not just those associated with the story itself.
Exactly. And people that aren't in the testing world don't necessarily realize the effort to prep tricky or very difficult combinations of test data for your testing, and that's why you need to say, okay, this is actually a 5 or a 8 or whatever the point is for that effort. So yeah.
My next comment is going to sound straightforward and something obvious, right? But that should be done by the person testing. Now, you're going to say, well, of course it should be. So many organizations I talk to, testing will be told how long it would be depending on the development effort, right? So when I'm saying that those estimations, because it's not clear on the slide, and I'm saying this, but size, QA tasks, and QA capacity, that input should come from the testing team and not being handed down because the development effort is 10 points and 3 points for testing because it's not as big, right?
Exactly.
So it goes without saying, but I still talk to a lot of people who says, oh, wow, we didn't know that testing should really be in there, and tell us how long it's going to take. Because now it's going to, back to the previous, it's going to throw a sprint off if you want to test for longer than we thought you should have tested. So for Swimlane 2 and 3, testing should be there and doing those estimations for themselves.
Mm-hmm. A good comeback on that is testers don't tell all the devs how long it's going to take, do they? The BAs don't tell the devs that'll take you 2 weeks to code that. Like it's not, that's not a two-way road, is it? Everyone estimates their own work except for QA. I've had that experience as well. It's a strange one.
But also, I've used this example in the past where testing should take 20 to 30% of the development effort, but I can make a single change in a CSS file or a JavaScript file, a single line, which is going to take an immense amount of testing. In that case, you can't say, that one line change has taken 10 seconds and therefore we don't need to test it. Well, actually, you now need to go and potentially do testing on different browsers, and you need to check on mobile, etc., etc. So I think, it's about pragmatism and being pragmatic around things. But absolutely, testing should come up with estimation. They should have an equal voice in terms of how long an activity what the size of a story should be, how long activity should take. And if there's a testing specific activity, they need to have the loudest voice in terms of how long we actually need for that, because they would have thought about it much more than the developers.
Yeah. Leon, don't get me started on sizing. I was at a team where we eventually said, drop these points, just put in hours. Like, this is going to take me 2 days. I'm putting in 16 hours. To me, that's a much more accurate estimation. That's just me. But I don't know. Sometimes it gets very fluffy. And especially if you give because then you can actually really size the dev is going to take me X amount of hours, this hours. And you can actually say, I've got X amount of hours in the week. This is sort of my estimation. Then it's like hard and fast. But maybe that's a topic for another day. What do we think about sizing?
I think it's about what works for you. What works for you as a team. And if you as a team decide we actually want to estimate in hours as opposed to story points, then why not? As long as you are getting through your work, as long as you're delivering what you said at the start of the sprint, then I don't really care how you deliver it, as long as everyone is in agreement. But I think the problem comes in where one person wants to estimate in story points and another person says hours is good and no, let's go minutes, etc. Let's use planning poker. No, let's use t-shirt size, etc. Then it just starts going wrong. But I think if everyone can agree to a single way, then I think it's fine.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, pragmatism. Okay. I think I've said it about 15 times already. I might say it another 10 times.
It's your catchphrase, like Stephen says, it depends.
It depends, absolutely. Patent pending, it's going to be on a t-shirt.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Stephan, just quickly, sorry. I don't think we're going to get through everything. So I suggest maybe we do one more and then we can look at the rest in a next session. Otherwise, this is going to become very long, and we know that people don't have that much time to watch podcasts. So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they'll actually watch the second one. So I think maybe let's just discuss one more, and then we can park it for today.
Sure. Maybe we should just wrap up this swimlane. I've still got two more top points that may also spark debate. Ensure definition of ready is met. So whatever you define in your definition of ready, Once again, like it's, for example, clear and testable acceptance criteria and or a stable test environment. I mentioned a few other examples, and there's lots to read up, so that's quite an obvious one. I think the second one or the third one is quite important and sometimes missed. Coordinate any externally required testing. So sometimes, especially if we've got clear non-functional requirements, user stories in a sprint might require specific things like performance testing or security testing, or later down the line UAT or OAT. Somebody needs to coordinate that. Sometimes that falls between the cracks, and the testing teams thinks it's the Scrum Master or vice versa. I think primarily the ownership should sit with the QA team to drive it and make sure somebody drives it at least. Almost like when you say racy, they could be accountable but also responsible, typically both, but maybe it's a bit of a combination between the Scrum Master or whoever else. But I think they need to play a role in, especially it's in the test plan, they should know that it should be coming up. They should keep an eye out and understand that that's a requirement. If it's security testing, for example, I've worked at companies where you need to book out the pen testing team 3 months in advance because they're so busy. If you know that's going to happen 3 months down the line, start booking that slot, even though it's not maybe in this next few sprints. So I think that's important.
I think just, sorry, on the second point, I think what's very important to realize there is where you have clear and testable acceptance criteria. This is not the time to actually start looking at whether it is clear and testable. That needs to be done during grooming stage, during backlog refinement stage. So this is just saying, oh, we have a definition of ready, and this is one of the things. But you can't start doing the work when you're doing sprint planning, because that's way too late. You can't now go and go back to say, oh, this requirement isn't clear, or this is maybe not that testable. So I just want to be clear in terms of what that means. It means ensuring that it's met.
Yeah.
So
this is checklist. Sorry, Stephan.
No, what I think what this means is, like you said, Leon, this is a quality gate. We are checking that those tick boxes in the DOR is met. If it's not ticked, we cannot pull it into the sprint. We need to pick up the next one, or whatever the case may be. So it's a quality gate concept.
Stable test environments. We might discuss that for another day.
I've never
could
seen
be a conversation completely on its own.
Leon, we've got 5 minutes. Would you like to jump into the next one? I'm not sure if we're going to land.
I think let's finish this one, and then next time we can discuss the next four.
Sure.
Yeah.
Starting with a sprint. How would you? I'm going to play devil's advocate here now. So if we put in our definition of ready a stable test environment, how are we defining whether it's stable before we started testing?
It's available to the right people. I don't want to go into detail there. The data within it allows me to complete the test that I need to do, and that any other activities in that environment people are aware that I'm going to be using it. So it could be ready, it could be full of data, but there's 12 of the testers using it at the same time. We'll trash each other. That's the kind of three standouts I can think of off the top of my head.
Well, I think also if you look at the definition of ready, one of the things that I think it's important is to say all external and internal dependencies are identified for those user stories. If you can say upfront, as part of me having to sign off user story A, B, and C, I need to integrate with this or that API, and that's not ready, then to me, that's not a stable test environment. Yes, maybe I can create mocks and stubs and whatever I need to do, but then we need to raise it and say it's not really testing what we should be testing. So you need to understand the complexity of integration. It's not only the little bit of your application, it's almost like the systems of systems environment. And you need to understand to what point you need to test. So coming back to that architectural diagram all the time, if you don't understand the bigger picture and how things fit in together, you might think you have a stable environment until you start doing your actual testing. So
I would challenge that a little bit, because this is sprint planning. So I will say that you will have no code that is ready for you to test, because the sprint has not started yet, right? Data will probably not be there, because again, this is sprint planning. So I'm hearing that we want code and data and stability before the sprint starts, and I don't think you'll get that, because the developers are only developing the things that you want to test during the sprint. So I don't think that a stable test environment is necessarily quality gate thing, yes, from a do we have an environment that we can test on? Should there be something to test? Maybe that, but I don't think you're going to get any code for that sprint before the sprint has started.
It depends. Sorry, Steve.
Sorry, I get paid every time you say it.
Yeah, it depends. Maybe there's an API that there's no dev involved in the API. It's just an API that's not been set up or configured yet for you to test on. I understand if there's lots of bits and pieces that still needs to be developed, that's fine. But your baseline before you start any dev, there should be some level of stability on that. Like, yeah. Anyway, maybe it's very much it depends one. But yeah, and that's a good point you're making. Obviously, if the APIs you need to integrate is still need to be developed, then you won't know. Everything's still up in the air. But
But again, Stephan, just to come back to that. So say all the APIs that you need to integrate to exist. We just said that development and testing of that development happens within the sprint. So you can't realistically expect any of that to have happened before that sprint, because you are testing what they are developing. And what they are developing, they need to deploy to that environment. So that environment will not be ready with the code before you go into the sprint, because, again, the code will be developed and tested in that sprint. Yes, obviously, from a regression testing perspective, I think maybe there's an argument to be made. But for any new work in this project, we are only going into the sprint, and I need to test it when it is available, and not before it is available.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Maybe
I think this is more
APIs.
about availability of a test environment. Sorry, it's about making sure that during your sprint planning phase, you know which environment you're going to be testing on. You know that you have availability to it. There's no other team in that environment. There's maybe not so let's go back to the other example, the one where we said, certain teams do testing down the road. They do it in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. Maybe that's a separate team that's currently in that environment. Yeah. Knowing that environment's going to be ready for you to start tomorrow when the sprint starts, or later today, I think that's what that is in terms of the definition of ready. We can debate the actual stability of a test environment and what it needs, etc. But I think it's slightly different.
That's a good point.
So I think that's a good. Sorry, Stephan.
No, it's a good point. If you have 10 teams and everybody shares one QA environment, definitely there needs to be some kind of a test environment management system where you can book it or reserve it. So good point, Leon.
Okay, I like hearing good point, Leon, and therefore I'm gonna leave it right there. So that's the last thing that was said, and then I'll remember it until the next podcast.
Maybe that's your stand-off catchphrase.
I think that's a good point to pause, because next time we can then actually start looking at the actual in-sprint activities and what that entails. And then obviously once you get past your sprint demos, your retros and that type of thing. So I really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks a lot. And I'm looking forward to the next one. So thanks to anyone that watched, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.